Hi, I'm Val. Welcome to my channel. New to the tube, but I appreciate it if you wanted to follow this journey with me, to subscribe and like and all those different jazzy things that we all know. This format helps us to connect. Um, so this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about how and why I made the decision to what I call forge the unpaved path. Why did I make those decisions? Why did I walk away from a career where I literally had tenure and a guaranteed job, and a salary and a 401k and benefits until that like future retirement date, or when you just absolutely refuse to leave and you've ended everything, right? um, Not everyone has that type of career, and I get that, but I feel like it's in academics, it's really like one of the last kind of like um, types of careers that represent this kind of like the American dream, right? Of like we, especially in my generation, before the internet, before all of the magical, amazing things that the younger generation has of social media and becoming an influencer at 12 years old or whatever. When I was 12, I was in Girl Scouts and watching Saturday morning cartoons on the television, right? So as a Gen Xer, in that sweet spot of kind of growing up before 2000, but also not having this kind of like understanding of what opportunities, like what could I do with my life. Um, so I think that I just kind of went through, like a door would open and I kind of went through it. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that. And I ended up finding, you know, the path of like not sure what you want to do, but you go to college and you get a degree and then you get a job and then you get the job that has the benefits, and then you get a house and you have a relationship or whatever, and some people choose to have kids. um, and I was just at the point in my life where I'm like, I don't know if I feel like all of this was actually like a lie, right? Um, that maybe this kind of system that we're being told to get into isn't necessarily beneficial for my mental health and my personal well being and my goals. And I think that our goals could change, but I think that we can also um, realize maybe that we hopped on a train and didn't look back to realize that maybe we could have taken a different direction. And that's kind of where I ended up. Um, so I will do a different video about how I realized that I was in a toxic workplace and what were some of the things that I did to navigate that. But today, in this video, what I'd like to talk about is um, my effort to help people disconnect to reconnect, and encouraging people to figure out how to find, rediscover some of those internal passions that you might have, or like the things that you kind of keep putting aside because there's other expectations for you, or from family, from friends, from society, right? We have these like expectations of the things that we should be doing. And for me growing up as a Gen Xer, I think some of the most significant role models and influences that I had were in kind of these really about like empowering women to strive for independence and whatever you wanted. And that was kind of what my parents would always do too, like just follow follow your follow what you need to do. But I did that and I think I got a little derailed, right? So there's like the Mary Tyler Moore show, and there's like the Mary Tyler Moore, uh, her the jingle, right? Um, Wonder Woman, Bionic Woman, all of these women that had these like special powers, and then you had TV shows that were kind of like everyday people. And even into the 90s, where you had someone like Murphy Brown, who was kind of like the scapegoat of representation of a single mother, right? Of like a woman who was forging her own path and decided to be a mom. Um, those types of things. So, nowadays we are all consuming media in a different way than we did when I was growing up, when kind of everyone watched the same television shows. It was on at the same time. You might record it and maybe talk about it at school or talk about it at work or something like that. Anyway, so have you ever said, if I could, I would? I found myself saying that a lot. And I was kind of going through these motions of like, I want to have a house one day. And when I have a house, then I'll get a dog and, I'll have a garden and all those things. Well, I got the dog, but I never really accomplished the garden. For example, like it was just, I was always being pulled in so many different directions, and the type of work I was doing. I always felt like super exhausted, to the point where towards the end of my career that I walked away from, I was experiencing insomnia and sleep deprivation, that I went to have like a sleep study done and all these different things, where they just said, nothing's wrong with you. We don't know what's wrong with you. Well, lo and behold, what was really wrong with me was that I was in the wrong place, and I was being subjected to a hostile work environment, where what I didn't realize was that I was kind of being subjected to some psychological torture almost. Um, so where does that "if I could, I would" thing come in? So after kind of being stubborn in like, I know that this is what I'm really good at, and I love my job. I loved what I did. I loved um interacting with people. I love teaching. I love seeing the aha moment. I loved all of that. But all of the other kind of like surroundings of just not getting respect from administration, um, and a lot of these different things. Um, so what I ended up doing was I started to recognize that most people, so I was kind of like, I had like, my hand here, right? So like, in the type of career that I was in, you can only apply for that type of job once a year. And if you get an interview, you don't know if you're going to get the job. And if you get the job, you have to move and relocate. So I had already done that a few times. Now, most people are in a type of a career where maybe they can move within the same community that they're living in, or maybe you get a really great opportunity and you can relocate, and you're not moving laterally, and you're not kind of like starting over. You're literally moving up the ladder, right? Of that ladder we've been promised, and they'll move you, and you're already connected to some sort of work community or something like that. But in my case, what that looked like for me was uncertainty, and no guarantee that I actually might be able to get a job. So I was kind of faced with this like, do I stay where I am? How long can I do that? Can I stay till that? You know, long time, 72, 75. Like some of the people I was working with were like in their like mid 70s and they refused to retire. Insane. Can I make it to like the 69, where no. Can I do the 65? Can I do the 62? Can I do the 59 and a half for when you can draw on your social security? And what I realized was like these five things or almost five things. I'm like, I don't think I can do that, right? So one of them is the career. Like, can I stay where I am but shift within jobs, um, or stay in the same place that I was living and move laterally in some way? So that was a no-brainer. That just wasn't going to be possible. The second thing was, if I'm happy in my community and I'm happy in kind of like where I live and the job is kind of crappy, maybe I can offset that like crappy thing with all these other things. Um, and that became kind of began the unraveling of like, I don't think I can be here anymore. So we spend way more time at work and with the people we're working with than we do at home or with our families and that kind of thing. So having that be a really negative part of my life, I was exhausted all the time. I was tired, and therefore I didn't do all these other things like have a garden or have my urban chickens or whatever it was, because I just couldn't function in that capacity. I was always trying to respond to this chaotic workplace, right? So at times, I really loved where I lived. I had relocated for this position, and I took advantage of like living close to a city, and I could get to Boston, I could get to New York, and it was super exciting. But then it just started to get old. I just was like, "Ugh, this is kind of exhausting. And do I really need to go out to eat all the time? Or, how do you find the friends that are going to go out to eat with you or whatever, right? Because everyone gets into their busy lifestyles. And what I realized, being not a native Rhode Islander, which is where I ended up living, was just really hard to chip away into kind of like becoming a local. It was just really hard to connect to community. And I was super lucky that there was a community of people who had been like moved to the same place that I did at around the same time, that started a social network. But everyone, like, people start to have families and all these types of things, and I just was like, okay, so this is an important part of my life, but if all of these other things are negative, how can I stay here? And then the fourth thing was kind of the weather, right? So it took me a while to realize that I was living in a place that I didn't grow up, so I had never experienced the type of extreme weather where I was living. So in the Northeast, um, there were more hurricanes and nor'easters than I had experienced when I lived in Florida, for example. I was told, it doesn't snow here that much. And then things are, weather's changing, things are changing, and it just like snowed all the time and it was just cold all the time, for me. And, shoveling snow and all these different things. I'm just like, can I do this when I'm old? Like, I just started having this like, do I really want to, do I love this place enough that I want to live here for 20 more years and deal with shoveling snow all the time? And one of the things I discovered when I moved up north is I have this thing called Raynaud's syndrome, which is comes on in like extreme stress and in extreme cold. So like I literally couldn't be outside for a long period of time, and then I would shovel and my hands would be like frozen. So I used to walk my dog in my neighborhood, And a lot of the houses look like they were empty. So I'm like, what is going on around here? But in the winter time, like the driveway would be snow plowed or something like that. And what I realized was I was living in a neighborhood that was either temporary um, inhabitants of like rental property that was kind of like come and go, and it was really chaotic and literally in an urban environment, and there was like drug dealing happening across the street from me. Like it was just all sorts of like weird things that I didn't expect in kind of a city environment. I don't know why I didn't expect that. And people would just like, I would be out doing yard work and I would watch people. I remember this one day, this old man like stopped his car on my street and opened the door and threw trash in the road. So I was constantly like cleaning up litter. It was super windy where I live, so it was like the trash from people's trash cans. And when the trash truck would come and the trash truck would like put the stuff in there, like trash would fly all over the place. And for some reason, where I was like my house was in a specific spot that like all the wind and everything, like it would collect in my yard. So that was like really weird but frustrating, right? So it was just kind of like, do I want to grow old in this place? And then I've had opportunities to travel, which was great. And then I kind of went back to Tennessee a few times and went back to Florida a few times. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't get so dark here. And, I just realized that there's other places to live. And I'm like, why? I don't really need to torture myself to live in this place that's super frustrating. And if I sold my house and moved to another house or something like that in the same place, because I thought about that too. So maybe I could, so I kind of was examining this toxic workplace. And I'm like, all right, well, let me just take this out of the picture and figure out if it's the toxic workplace or the entire environment where I was living. So I kind of started thinking about like the road sucked and my commute sucked. I'm like, why am I in the car 30 minutes one way and 2 hours coming home? Like, okay, what if I moved closer to work? Would that change things? No, because of the cold and the snow, right? Or the roads were in really crappy condition. And Rhode Island at the time, and they might still be, like received like an F rating in infrastructure. And, so I was constantly afraid that like the highway bridge was going to collapse, or, there were potholes everywhere. And I'm driving in my car and I would just get jostled so much that I literally was going to the most amazing massage therapist like every other week because I was in such pain, right? So it was kind of all of these different variables of what am I doing? Why am I living here? I don't have a lot of family around. So that's like number 5, right? So like family and friends and that kind of thing. So what I realized was all of this carrot dangling of like a paycheck, um, 401k and like medical benefits was literally not worth my like insomnia and like soul crushing, um, just losing any sort of desire for to leave the house at any other time, right? It just became so like consuming and just like I cannot even, it was just too cold to leave. I just started like not even going to all these social events that I got invited to. I just was so tired. Um, so those were the factors, and I really evaluated, um, like I said, the different things. Like can I stay in where I'm living and quit my career and get a graphic design job because that's what I taught. So that was all the different variables, right? Okay, so I got to that point where I'm like, I just do not think that I could manage staying here. So here's where the if I could, I would comes into it. If I could, I would. I used to say if I could, I would. I'd live in the countryside and I'd live in this, I'd split my time. Or if I could, I would. I'd have a lot more animals. Or if I could, I would, um, have my garden. So all of these different variables as I'm driving to work on this crappy road where I'm just like afraid that the bridges are going to collapse and whatever, and like winter is about to come and arrive again in a few months, I started to have a conversation with myself, and I kind of was like, okay, let me talk to the kid that I used to be. Like, what if I talk to the little girl growing up who, like, I feel like I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, even though I saw all these like amazing women, like I told you, in the media, just kind of like having a great life and like moving into apartments and navigating their worlds, and it was just all this like positive stuff. um, what would I do now that there are so many other opportunities for people nowadays? Because if I get a teaching job, I'm going to have to move, I'm going to have to make new friends, I'm going to have to start over anyway, and I'm probably going to have to cut my salary and stuff like that because I'm going to have to literally start over again. So I could move to a city and I could like wait tables, or I could do the, just kind of like get back into any sort of grind. Or I could kind of create something new that maybe I didn't realize that I wanted when I was younger, or didn't really know how to figure that out, right? So when I was a kid, I grew up in Girl Scouts. I really loved camping. I was a camp counselor, I was a Girl Scout leader. As an educator, I always was interacting with people. And I just had this like deep, deep yearning to live a little bit more tied to nature and to have that garden and to have those like physical activities way before retirement, right? So that was part of it too, that I was like witnessing people in my daily life who refused to retire. And in these conversations with them, they had no idea what they would do. And they're just like, yeah, it's just easy to come to work. I live a few miles away. It's comfortable. I don't know what else I would do. This is my family. Like all these different things that they would tell me. And some of them were just so frail that they literally were like walking in walkers. And I just got horrified. I was like, I cannot do that. I cannot be here for 20 more years. And basically, that day, I was driving to work and having that conversation with myself. And I'm like, what does it look like? If I could, I would. The countryside, garden. Okay, but like, what's the bigger picture? And that is when everything literally kind of like came together. Like I'm driving and it was like the Matrix or something, and it just kind of felt like in my windshield that it was like all these different aspects of my life that like I wasn't able to go camping because I was so busy all the time, or I was too cold or whatever, or couldn't find anyone to go with me. um I'm like, you know what, I think that I need to move to the countryside. I think I need to buy land and create a place for artists and writers and other people who maybe don't have that opportunity to live full time on the land to come and visit. And I can have the animals, and I can be an artist, because that was another thing that I kept shoving aside. Like all of these things that I wanted to do for 20 something years just kept being pushed away because of the extraordinary circumstances that I was in. super grateful for all of that though, because all of the learning lessons and all of the amazing benefits and opportunities that I took advantage of while I was there, even in the midst of this like horrible toxic place, psychological abuse, the the lessons that I learned and the people that I met and the hundreds of students that I have interacted with make that like really extremely rewarding. But what I realized was I didn't want to wait to quote unquote retire, right? Because who knows if I'm going to make it that long? Who knows what my physical abilities are going to be by the time I'm that age? And maybe it's just time for me to call this quits and to try something different. And that's what I did. And I'm kind of calling it, basically, I kind of like compare it, my unpaved path that I'm on now, with what I describe as like an HOV lane. And if you've ever been to Boston or in some other, I don't know, some other places, in Boston, when I would drive up there, they would have the HOV lane sometimes, and it had literally had these like cement barriers. There was this cool machine that would like at a certain time it would like drive through the middle lane, and it would like move the cement barriers over for the HOV thing, and then it would move it back at the end of the day or something like that. But basically what that meant was like if once you were in that HOV lane, you couldn't get out of it until you got like literally downtown. And that's kind of what the career I had felt like, that I was just kind of cruising along, just having a good old time, not necessarily having to deal with like, you know, obstacles and that kind of thing. It felt like it was just kind of like this, I could stay doing this forever, you know. I've got tenure. Um just teach the same old thing, or I could just try something new. So, yeah, if you say if I could I would, what is it that you say if you could you would? Share that experience down below. And if you are in a place where you are really trying to figure out if the path you're on is the best one for you, or if you've had this like internal yearning to not necessarily move to the countryside, but maybe you'd like to write, or maybe you're an artist, or maybe you want to take a welding class, or maybe you want to take a month off and go somewhere that you've always been dreaming of, or any of those things. I actually also have a website, valsloan.com, so you can reach out to me at that as well. So, anyway, I really appreciate you sticking around for the full time of the video, even if you've watched me on fast forward. And it would be fantastic if you subscribed. My goal is to provide more content on a weekly basis, or I have a bunch of different ideas of what type of content I can bring you, including things that are nature based and outside. All right, bye for now. See you next time.